Hi and welcome to the Homeopathy Health Show. I'm Atiq Ahmed Bhatti, a fourth generation homeopath with over 25 years of professional experience and practice in this field of healing. The Homeopathy Health Show is the online voice of homeopathy around the world, promoting and raising awareness of this truly unique complementary system of healing, which is suitable for all ages, young and old. Every week I invite guests from the world of homeopathy to come and share their experiences, their work, offer insights and essentially talk all things homeopathy. Why not visit www.liketreatslike.co.uk and click on the radio and podcast button to listen to the latest episodes. So let's begin today's show here on UK Health Radio, the world's #1 talk health radio. Hi and welcome to another episode of the Homeopathy Health Show here on UK Health Radio. I'm Atiq Ahmed Bhatti. I'm delighted to have Mike Bridger on today's podcast. He's the founder and principal of the Contemporary College of Homeopathy, which is based in Bristol in the UK. Mike is passionate about clear and accessible information in homeopathy. He wants students to leave the college able to successfully and effectively communicate to patients about their illness in a meaningful and easily understood way. Mike also finds time to teach at the Centre for Homeopathic Education, the CHE. Mike Bridger, absolute pleasure to have you on today's Homeopathy Health podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time out.
Well, thank you for having me on this lovely sunny day.
It is sunny indeed, and it's even sunnier because you're on. So
that's very sweet of you. We've never met before.
No, but it does seem that we have now. We've certainly had.
Good. That's good.
I have lots to ask you, Mike, but the first question is, what was your first introduction to homeopathy as such?
My first introduction to homeopathy was, there's an arts college near where I am now, actually, at Dartington College of Art. And I remember I was doing a writing course, playwriting. And I remember I lived in this little log cabin with a girlfriend, and this woman came up and started talking that she'd been for homeopathic treatment. And I said, "What's that?" And she said, "Well, you get a pill." I said, "What's in it?" She said, "I don't know, nothing." And I just thought this was the height of insanity. Absolutely insane. Nothing in it, or hardly anything. What for, she didn't know. And I just thought, this is crazy. Looking back, that was the first time I ever heard anybody mention anything about homeopathy. So that was sort of where it started. And I...
As a shock.
Total
it started
shock.
In a shock, didn't it?
Could pay money for a pill with nothing in it. One pill. I couldn't believe it. But then years, you know, how we learn to regret our cynicism. Then I went into playwriting, became a playwright, was writing plays. A girlfriend at the time said, "Oh, there's this advert for a course in homeopathic medicine in Tiverton." I said, "What's that?" And she said, "It's treating people with sort of plants, and snake venoms," and I thought, wow, that's really interesting. That was my first, and I don't know why, sort of something clicked. And I just thought, I'd like to study where you study. So I was never particularly good at studying anything, really, up to that point, apart from theatre. And I got a book and read about sort of plants and so on. And I thought it was brilliant, utterly brilliant, really clicked. And then I decided to do an interview. It was a part-time course. I did an interview on, and I've got a book, lectures. Can you believe this? My first book, which is on philosophy by Ken. I mean, heavy going or what?
Wow.
But I remember reading this on a coach going up to Edinburgh, an overnight coach from Devon. And I couldn't believe the sense of it. It was just, it's like a lot of people were saying about homeopathy. It's like coming home. You suddenly feel it just sits with you. And that was it, really. After that, I went on to study in London and never looked back, really.
That's a really amazing story, actually.
Yeah.
really is, because it's just literally the way it started.
Yeah,
From
absolutely.
shock to love, passion, and commitment, isn't
Yeah.
it?
And I could have just joined the Navy, being an officer in the Royal Navy.
Hmm.
Just about missed it by the skin of my teeth. Thank God. Not only for me, but for the Royal Navy, I think probably. I'd be on a better pension, that's for sure.
Oh boy. Yeah, you
Do some good
mentioned
shit.
theatre actually. Were you in theatre before?
Yeah, that's where I started. I started studying theatre language, and then I just got into writing plays. And I suppose that's part of the thing. There's quite a link between medicine and playwriting and writing in general. I think it's to do with. I mean, I was 23, 22, 20, and I realised, sitting in a bedsit writing characters, and I don't know anything about anybody. I don't know anything about people really. And I suppose that was part of the attraction. Was when you become a homeopath, you're just listening to story after story, and it's like you're a cross between a priest, a psychotherapist, a doctor, all sorts of things come into play. And wow, the privilege of it all was just to hear story after story and be paid to hear story after story and prescribe. It was just, and still is, pretty exciting. I love it.
It is, isn't it? The best job in
Yeah.
the world. It really
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
And the fact that the results are so evident and so fluid and so beautiful and so lasting,
Yeah.
that's just like the icing on the cake. When a patient phones back or follow-up consultation and the results are there and
Yeah.
they're relieved as well, and of course the practitioner himself or herself are relieved.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Couldn't agree more.
So your journey led you also to founding the Contemporary College itself.
Yeah. Well, there was certainly in the UK, I don't know other countries, but in the UK, there was a sort of split. There was a lot of splits going on and about what homeopathy is. But I started my own college essentially, and I called it the Contemporary College, but essentially it was classical in the real meaning of the word, the real history, the Hahnemannian story of what classical means. So it was lovely. It started off in a little place in Taunton. It grew and grew, it spread. We ran clinics and so on. It's like pretty much on the same format, apart from the differences I'm just talking about, as any other college, It was very exciting to do. We actually set up the clinic in a medical centre in Taunton, which was great because I said to the GPs there that I was working with at the time, we can have this college and it'll be free to patients. So it's cheaper than the NHS because they won't even have to pay for prescriptions. So they were happy with that. So it was a nice sort of fusion of, if you like, allopathic, well, not allopathic, they were a nice bunch of doctors and homeopathy. So it was a great introduction to the outside world of homeopathy, being seen as part of a medical centre,
And how was that with the patients and students alike, actually?
Well, I mean, they really liked it. It was, in a way, it didn't make that much difference. It was just purely really location. But I suppose in the sense of actually homeopathy is now perceived to be part of the health system, was a good thing. I mean, we didn't make it part of that. That was the only thing it actually had. But I mean, at that time, it's amazing the difference now. I was working in 3 medical centres, as a homeopath. And that was really interesting. So things have changed a lot now. You very rarely would see that now.
Were the doctors themselves savvy with homeopathy, or did they require you to explain it to them? And
yeah, they did really. I mean, I remember being really shocked because I remember a first meeting where, we all got together and I talked about homeopathy, and I thought there's going to be an argument of principle and philosophy. Except there wasn't an argument because, of course, really, they don't have one. There was no philosophy. There was no principle. I'm talking about cure or the law of cure and stuff. And it's like, I had no idea what I was talking about. So it was a bit pointless, really, in some ways. One or two of them got it. We did some trials with Exeter University and into asthma and stuff like that, which was quite useful. But overall, no great shakes, really.
so, Mike, what was it like in the early days then, as far as students and uptake and teachers, finding teachers, of course, or were you just teaching yourself?
No, we had, in terms of teachers, there were plenty of teachers around. There were lots of colleges, lots more than there are now. There were lots of my colleagues and so on. I got in. I made sure it was reasonably eclectic and that it wasn't just the overall umbrella, if you like, the principles were mine, in that they were just homeopathic. There was no great shakes to that. But I did have different people coming with slightly different approaches. I mean, I had Dion Brett, who's very clinical, loves Burnett, so that was stuff I wasn't that au fait, so I had him doing that. Tony Hurley, who taught at CHE and still does, a bit more onto sort of the myth and that kind of way of presenting remedies. So it was a variety. Yeah, it was a good variety.
And as far as the students, how would you go about did you find a good influx, a steady stream?
Yeah, at the beginning, pretty much. Yeah, you just used to put an advert in the paper then. I mean, it's
yes, of
now.
course. Yeah, how different times are now.
Totally, aren't they? An advert in the paper or a postcard on some library. Now, crikey, it's much more. And then you just have an open day and people would turn up. And that would be it. That would be your marketing. I mean, now it's the whole, which I know nothing about, is, Facebook or whatever it is, and using social media. I'm absolutely useless at that. But I've always thought that it's the quality of that will pull the students, really. The better the quality, the better the reputation. A bit like being a homeopath, you can do loads of marketing, but if you're not very good at homeopathy, you don't understand it well, you're not going to do terribly well. But if you get a patient better, that's where your marketing is, in getting someone better. The same with the college, getting a student to go out and be able to practice with what you taught them. It spreads.
That's so true. I think when I started 25 years ago, this is all I didn't advertise. And in those days, nowadays, it's very easy to just get on the mobile phone or a PC and you can do a lot. But it was all word of mouth, like I think predominantly with like all homeopaths. And in fact, Mike, it's interesting because when I started, somebody said to me, a friend of mine who's a homeopath in Yorkshire, he said to me, it's going to take you about 10 years before you're in your element or you actually know really what's going on. Yeah. And personally, that's so true.
Yeah.
It actually does take that. It's a commitment, isn't it? It's not just a journey. Homeopathy is a commitment.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think you're right. It's a bug, isn't it? You're just caught, really.
Yes.
I think it's also very healthy to say, people ask me, I say, no, it's a job, 9 to 5. Not quite true, but it's quite good as a practitioner to keep that in mind. You do need to stop at the end of the day and, as you say, get out and cook a meal and all the rest of it, and not become too obsessed. Otherwise, you end up burnt out.
That's so true. And in fact, I would go further, because as a homeopath, I personally feel that all homeopaths are very because of the compassion. Of course, you have to have compassion to be able to help somebody, to want to help somebody, to help them heal.
Yeah.
But that makes us quite sensitive as individuals.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of illness carries a lot of negative vibrations. Of course it does, or vibrations which are have spikes in them. And that affects, of course it affects anyone who is trying to help. Yeah,
I agree. I think there's a hell of a difference between, people often get it wrong, the overly, particularly when you start out, overly sort of sympathetic and I care for everybody and I love everybody and phone me anytime, day or night, all those boundaries broken. And what you see is you end up with homeopaths burnt out at the end, absolutely burning out. And so there's a hell of a difference between sympathy and empathy. Empathy is, not colluding with the patient about what's going on with them, because often that'll happen too. It's like, oh, they're completely understand. Up to a point, that's fine. But you've got to keep that objectivity and distance to be able to observe what's going on. What is going on here? What is the problem? Are they resentful? Are they indignant? Those kind of judgment calls are really important in homeopathy. And that's where we get unstuck if we're not careful. We start putting our own stuff onto the analysis of the patient.
Absolutely. Now there's some good news on the horizon, isn't there? Because we were talking just before the podcast and you mentioned by the end of this year, there's going to be a postgraduate course that the Contemporary College is going to be offering to homeopaths.
Yeah, I mean we've had it for years. It sort of went by the wayside a bit. It went to CHE. I got Marcus involved, Marcus Fernandez from CHE. He started to teach on it as well, the 3 principles. But it's sort of just slowed down and stopped. But we're going to resurrect it probably in December. And yeah, that's a lovely, a lovely course. Yeah, it's like a weekend a month, but it's really what you need to know, because a lot of people spend 3-4 years, so much stuff congested in their heads with all this material. It's like, what do you actually need? What do you need to practice? So really is keeping it down to the foundation, the fundamentals of practice, basic philosophy, although it isn't basic, of course. It's through the eyes of people who've graduated and studied and are now practicing. It gives them a 3D interpretation of what they're doing, really clearly, really clear guidelines. Absolutely. Yeah. So it's a great course. We love teaching, actually.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I was quite interested to know that you've taught, or you are teaching perhaps all over the world, the US, Iceland, Finland, Ireland. So how does, are you teaching in specific colleges, or do you have satellite offices as well, or training establishments?
It's just when invited, really, at colleges and so on, or to run a webinar or seminars and things. So in Ireland, it's a mixture of both. I teach at the Irish School, and we organise a sort of seminar, 3-day seminar there on the west coast of Ireland, which is great. So it varies, from place to place.
I had Mary Barr actually from the Irish School on a few weeks ago on the podcast.
Yeah.
Sorry, from the Belfast School rather.
Okay, yeah. I know them all.
Mike, I know you take a particular interest in remedy relationships. Do share.
What happens, when a remedy doesn't work, when it does a little, when it aggravates, all that sort of stuff. It's kind of there a bit, but not much, not as much as it should be. And you think, really, a busy practice is one of follow-ups. And it's not difficult to get a remedy that works first time, because it's probably the simillimum, and therefore the patient's reasonably healthy, presents as calc-carb really clearly. That's great. But more often than not, we're dealing with the movement of energy, which shifts from place to place. And that energy, when it shifts, is where does it shift to? A new remedy? Another remedy? Or does it need a repeat? Or is it miasm appearing? All those issues are the meat of what we do. So, I had a case where the first case where I really got interested was one of those awful cases where I was treating a woman with calc-carb, actually. She'd got various problems. I was doing very well on calc-carb. And a few months later, phoned up and said she was bleeding from the rectum. I thought, what do I do now? I repertorized again, and it came up calc-carb. Well, I couldn't give it again. I don't know whether I tried or not. I might have done. Couldn't give it again. And anyway, I was getting in a panic. I thought, what do I do? This is, the homeopathy is not working. And another one of those marvelous things, a bit like how I ended up in college with my girlfriend finding the postcard. I was probably packing my bags ready to go to prison, and when it all went wrong, and I'm pretty sure it was Hahnemann's Materia Medica Pura. I just was looking and it said, if in calc-carb, I'm looking at it, just there, if calc-carb aggravates, look to mercury or nitric acid. I'm pretty sure it was Hahnemann, actually. I thought, oh my, what? Phoned up the one, said, what's the colour of the blood? She said, bright red. Said, nitric acid, take nitric acid. It's gone in 10 minutes. I thought, wow, I wouldn't have known that. If I hadn't read that, then I wouldn't have known that. So the countless examples where, you get something like that happen, you think, shall I re-prescribe? Or you need another remedy. And so I looked into that a lot and started really compiling clinical lists of remedy reactions and deep acting acute remedies, and really got well bedded into it. It's my thing, really. It's like I love the sort of and a lot of this stuff sounds theoretical, but it's like Kent talking about arsenicum and saying it's not deep acting. Well, what did that mean? I didn't really know at the time. You realize it's really important because he goes on to say, you know, it's not deep acting enough in cases of pneumonia. You think it's working. Patients, I'm obviously not quoting him, but you know, you can give it, starts to work, patient dies. How can that be? It was the indicated remedy. He then goes to talk on about, you know, arsenicum, once the stage of pneumonia reaches a stage of hepatization, you need to find a deeper acting remedy. Often phosphorus or sulfur. You think, wow, this is gold. And it's the same thing's borne out with Douglas Borland, you know, in the homeopathic hospital who practiced here in London. Said the same thing about arsenicum. So we're talking about acute chronic remedies. We're talking about that some remedies don't do the job because they're not covering the pathology. And the remedies that are around the remedy you've given is going to be related. So the whole thing is utterly fascinating. Of course, that leads to follow-ups, how to deal with aggravations, when a remedy does nothing. There's a whole language there that's in bits and pieces in the books. You know, it's like this remedy, carbo-veg, follows lycopodium well if it's not working. Actually, it's more than that. It's about this deep, acute, chronic. You can give a remedy, not doing enough. You know, you don't know why, you repeat it, or people say we go higher or lower. Actually, it's probably the nature of the remedy, and it needs a related remedy, which is, let's say, deeper acting, or vice versa. So I think it's, to me, it became the mainstay of how I practice, is looking at that clinical relationship with remedy. I'm not really bothered about plants, minerals, all that stuff. It can be true, but it can also, you can have exceptions to it. You know, does that make sense? You know, like, plant is not as deep acting as metal. Well, you know, hang on, what about thuya? Thuya is a plant, it's very deep acting. So it didn't really, I didn't go down that road of, you know, periodic tape, all those other things. It's really clinical stuff that's been observed in practice that I've seen myself, and you can rely on it as, you know, a very good source. So that's basically the potted story.
You know, as you were talking about that, I actually was picturing Kent, and then I was picturing Dr. Hahnemann. It's there's the beauty of homeopathy is, and I don't want to make it sound like it is simple. I don't mean it in that way, but I mean the beauty of it is it's simple compared to perhaps how disease is treated nowadays. So you know, it's just a few steps. The patient comes in, it's a consultation, observation, the experience of the homeopath, and of course then there's some work in the background, and remedies are given. But how incredible these homeopaths were from Dr. Samuel Hahnemann on. I mean, to come up with relationships of remedies, to come up with modalities, to come up with the minutest detail of a remedy, my God, you know, that takes some commitment and dedication and time, doesn't it?
Totally.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Absolutely. You know, it's all visual. It's like Myers. I'm thinking about, how did Kahneman come up with Myers? Wow. Starting to observe groups of patients and saying they seem to suffer from certain conditions, and then taking it down to SORA, syphilis, and, you know, psychosis. Utterly brilliant. And I think,
and Mike, and to be able to do that, Dr. Hahnemann, to be able to do that over and above everything else that was going around in his life, as you know, he had to move quite frequently, and he had to take his family with him, and he's lugging his stuff along, and then of course all the unwanted enemies that saw him becoming very successful, who then sort of were quite, well, for want of a better word, you know, persecuting him. But then to still come up with something so incredible, it's mind-boggling, isn't it? Honestly.
Absolutely. You know, and you think all that. I mean, one of the things is, you said, you know, writer. I'm a writer by nature, and you know that part of that's about being originality. And I have to say, with homeopathy, it doesn't work. I've never found anything beyond what's there in those books as being workable. Other people say they have, but you know, it's be very careful that new systems and new this, new that. Look, in homeopathy, really, I don't think so. You look at the old masters and their books, and what they put at the beginning, say, this is dedicated to my profession. It may help a little. This is, the humility that's there, that's absolutely essential to be a homeopath, is humility.
I found, Mike, I'm not sure if you've had this experience, although having said that, I'm quite sure you have, but sometimes you have a patient sitting in front of you and you're going, the process is such that you're trying to write down, perhaps, let's say, certain remedies. But sometimes it's like a light moment, isn't it? It's like a ping and the remedy already comes into your mind. And I found, even by opening a book and saying, oh, that can't be right because it's not related at all. And you check the book and it's still not. But I've actually found that is the remedy that always works.
Yeah.
It just, and I'm not saying anything that, I know anything. Of course I don't. But what I mean is, with practice, with observation, it just happens, doesn't it? It just happens. You just know that may be the indicated remedy in a case, but hang on a minute, I've just had this remedy come into my mind. This is the one. And if you follow through, that's a positive vibration, isn't it? That's a connection.
Yeah.
And that's very special to homeopathy.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting, and in the interplay between, let's call it intuition, let's say. The beauty, some people just say, oh, I prescribe intuitive. You think, no, that's because I don't know about you in life. Intuitively, I've been right and I've also been wrong. The beauty with your intuition home, you can check it out and verify it. I always say, look, it's fine, have that thought, have that thing, but as long as you can justify it in terms of repertory and all the rest of it, really important. And sometimes you do just try and it works. Sometimes it doesn't, but know why you're doing what you're doing. Then you can backtrack if you need to.
I think it's about something you said right at the beginning, which was about listening. Observation is something that you pick up. It's a skill and it becomes natural. And before you know it, it's second nature, just like driving a car.
Yeah.
Mirror signal maneuver. We do that without thinking. We can be having a conversation with someone in the passenger seat. There's multiple things going on, but you're able to drive and multitask almost.
Yeah.
And that's, homeopathy is the observation part naturally comes in.
Exactly.
It's actually the listening part, isn't it? That's the most important part.
Yeah.
And 50% of someone's frustration of being unwell actually goes just by listening to them.
Yeah.
How amazing is that?
Amazing. It is, actually. So it is. It's funny. I had a patient this morning, really lovely lady. Nothing. She suddenly burst into tears. I said, "Oh, well, that's interesting. Why are you crying?" He said, "Because I've never talked about myself before." There's a woman about 32, never talked about herself. So is that, when we dug further, what about talking about herself is difficult, but it's just this thing that people don't talk about themselves or don't even observe themselves, and that's, with what we do, as long as we do it gently and carefully, people then reveal stuff they've never revealed to anybody before, blocks, pain, etc. And that's the beauty of our job. Then we've got a system to explain what's going on for them. Wonderful. And a remedy on top of that. You can't beat it.
It's fascinating though, isn't it? How just by releasing those emotions and being able to talk about a condition can help so quickly, so dramatically, and can turn a patient around. Totally. Or let's not refer to them as patient, but an individual, just by getting that. It's so true, isn't it? Get it off your chest.
Yeah.
The age-old saying, get it off your chest. But when you actually think about and ponder over that, getting it off your chest and trying to link that to medicine, because you're saying, well, you're going to get better just by doing that. But it's so true, but you can't actually, it's not tangible. You can't touch it. You can't feel it.
Yeah.
It's just an emotion expression.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, hey presto, you're much, I'm not saying you're cured, of course not, but what I mean for the conversation is you feel better. There's a release.
Yeah, exactly.
That's just, honestly, I think about these things a lot. I think, I don't know if it's my age now or what, but I'm just amazed that these little things can make such a huge impact. And in today's society, in today's world, people forget the simple things of walking barefoot on the grass to ground yourself.
Yeah.
As simple as that. We've forgotten everything. Everything has to be very complicated to justify that it's right.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now you do practice, don't you, as a homeopath, as well as as well as being the principal of the Contemporary College?
Yeah, I do.
And you practice in Devon?
Yeah, I mean, nowadays it's a lot on Zoom, isn't it? It's the old days of. I mean, I used to practice at Ainsworth Pharmacy in London, but that's closed as a pharmacy, as a clinic anyway. So I do miss that. I prefer to see people face to face, but during lockdown, all it wasn't really an opportunity. It worked, but it's not as good because there's a lot you can tell through the body language, all that stuff that you just don't see on Zoom. And I just enjoy the different way of relating as well in person. I mean, it's going to be old-fashioned soon talking like that, but as compared with seeing someone on TV screen. It is possible, but yeah. So everywhere really, wherever they are, Zoom, whatever, Skype. Yeah.
I think it's just the way it's going. I speak to, as you know, so many homeopaths all over the world now, and they all say the same thing, that since not even Zoom, WhatsApp call, a video call, and it's so easy to communicate with patients.
Yeah.
Which is nice because it makes homeopathy very, very accessible, globally accessible. But there's always, of course, as you said, observation, and that when you sit in front of a camera, like you're sitting like me, you're very conscious, and you can't tell my mannerisms. I can't tell yours. You don't know if I'm moving too much because I'm sitting still. Whereas when someone is physically in front of you, there's obviously movements. There's various micro expressions you can pick up, isn't there?
Totally. Yeah,
but is it busy? How's it going anyway? How's it going? Busy?
What's that?
Your practice?
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah. I mean, I'm doing as much as I wanted. I used to be much busier, but I've slowed down, doing a bit more teaching and so on. So it's absolutely as I want it. It's particularly as you say, Zoom has taken off, and Skype and all that has meant people it's more accessible. You don't have to rely on your geographical area. But as I say, there are advantages and disadvantages to both,
Yeah, absolutely. But it is good. Overall, I found that because of this accessibility, homeopathy is really becoming a focal point. A lot of people are now very open to it.
Yeah.
They may not understand it, of course, but because you can't just understand it with a simple Google search. Certainly not, But they're willing to learn something about it, so they're aware.
Yeah.
And that's so good. We're living in a very positive time as far as homeopathy is concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's the same old thing, isn't that? When you look at what's treatable allopathically, it's amazing how much isn't, And people have just got fed up with like that woman this morning saying, gosh, I've never talked about myself before. Well, that's routine as a homeopathic consultant. What makes you tick? Who are you? They're really good questions. And we live in although we're apparently in this information accessible world, actually people are more isolated and more lonely. So it becomes, there aren't the same. And I think that's to do with COVID partly, but it's continued on from that. People are not as sociable as they were, I don't think. They're more isolated. And kids on Zoom, everybody's doing it on computers. It's just not great for social interaction. And social interaction is talking about yourself and who you are and what makes you tick and your problems.
I think,
the garden fence.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. It's
Shocking.
Becoming very comfortable to stay at home,
to
work from home. And
yeah.
when it does come to an event, I've had so many people who've come up to me and said, oh, I don't want to go. I said, why? Well, it's great. You're going to see your old friends or your colleagues, or it's just going to be a nice experience, a nice social experience, a networking opportunity even.
Yeah.
But it's like, no, I don't really want to do that. I'm not interested in anything. And it's a bit worrying as well, isn't it? Because
very well,
our basic expression, isn't it? We talk to each other, right? You have to talk. You can't live. You can't live on your own. It's just not how we're we've been designed and created, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
Couldn't agree more.
Do you get any time actually for any hobbies? I've asked some of the guests, Mike, some of their hobbies, and some of
Go
them
on,
are
tell me.
fascinating, you know.
Go on.
Well, there's plate spinning, there's wood carving, there's
Oh,
pottery, there's all the things I actually wouldn't expect have come up so far, which is quite interesting. My hobby, I suppose, is gardening, but not heavy
right.
gardening, but just, you know, just some floral gardening, I suppose you could
Yeah,
call it.
yeah.
You know,
Oh,
I do enjoy that. That's like my
yeah,
time to relax and switch off.
right. Ah, well, come on, blow the gap. What was Marcus's answer?
Oh, I didn't ask Marcus. I
Oh,
didn't ask him that, but I've actually, you just reminded me. I have to thank Marcus for introducing me to you and vice versa.
all right. Yeah. No, I've known him a long time. I've never worked out what his hobby. Oh, he's got loads actually. Um, my hobbies. Well, I like writing. Uh, I love playing chess.
Mm.
I like fishing. And I'm doing Aikido, which is just cracking. I love that. That is really lovely.
Mm.
It's like the physical equivalent of homeopathy, actually. Um, you know, the usual reading, doing nothing. Quite a lot of stuff, actually, when I think about it. Yeah, I enjoy lots of things. It's very important too, because, as I say, very easy to get drawn into the homeopathic thing too much, so it becomes all-consuming. You really need to have that, particularly say on the physical, because we tend to sit on our arse and see patients and whatever teach. Actually, physical stuff is really important. So I do a bit of boxing and training, which is great because it's physical. It's getting you out of your head. Homeopathy tends to be in the head. It's not physically orientated. So it's very important for people to do that for their own health, actually,
Mm.
I think.
Yeah, very, very true. Very true indeed. What are you working on any books?
Oh, gosh, sore subject. People keep asking me to write a book about remedy relationships.
You must. That was the next question, by the way.
Was it? Oh, God. I know the pressure's on. Do you know why I don't? I mean, I will do. I have to. Because you write stuff down and people take this they take it literally. So, for example, if I'd said, you know, if calc carb aggravates, look to mercury and nitric acid, it becomes, oh, if calc carb aggravates, give mercury or nitric acid. So it's a guide, not absolutely exclusively the only related remedies. It's a guide. And, you know, as I say to students, look, if you find, it took me ages to realize Polster is related to carcinosin and can come up. I had never seen it. I'd never heard anybody say that. So I didn't trust it. And then I heard enough people said, no, it happened. So that goes into but that doesn't mean to say you have to give Polster after carcinosin. And that's the problem with writing a book.
Mm.
When I talk it through, you can download the Orion, Orion stuff that I do. Orion, if you put that into Google, it should come up, and my name, it'll come up with downloads of remedy relationships and so on, acute and chronic. And I think there are a few, you know, through year in outline, details, and syphiline and so on. So the thing is with that, I'm talking. So it's a kind of different, doesn't feel so written in stone. You know, it's like this is when you're teaching, you're saying, you know, always go on the indicated remedies, not what I'm telling you. Go on the indicated remedies. But often the remedies that will come up will be these remedies. So I'm a bit careful about writing it in stone because it becomes as if it's absolutely a fact that you must follow. No, you follow the vital force, you follow the symptoms presented by the vital force, and we've observed certain remedies coming up together, related to each other. That's what counts. The first thing is what counts. What's the vital force doing? So that's why I haven't written the book, and I'm lazy. You know,
Okay, fair enough.
I will do.
But interesting. Are these lectures? These Orion lectures?
Yeah, they're recordings of lectures I've done. Yeah, for the Orion course. Yeah, yeah, and they're good, but a bit like you said, you don't like the sound of your own voice. I can't listen to them because it just sounds so disjointed Anyway, other people seem to listen to them and enjoy them, but yeah.
I know. We were having this conversation actually because I have to wear these headphones and I can hear myself, and
Oh, crikey, yeah.
it's really difficult for me to speak. So
Yeah. Oh, crikey,
I
right.
don't like hearing
Yeah.
myself at all.
Yeah, no, I don't think anybody does.
So tell me, your favorite remedies. Do you have any favorite remedies?
Oh,
And
you're not meant
if you
to.
do, there's you can choose up to 3 only.
Oh, really?
The top 3. Otherwise, the list will be big. I know, like everyone.
Wow. It's also based on experience and the ones you remember. I mean, it has to be Hepar Sulph would be one.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'd have to have that up there. It's like your desert island. What would you take on your desert island? I love carcinosin.
Amazing remedy. Yeah.
Oh, sensational.
Amazing.
Yeah. I'd be actually pushed for a third in that bracket. Trying to think. I mean, they're all great. I'd probably, if I had to choose, if you were talking about my own kit, I'd have to take sulfur, I think.
Yeah. Absolute diamond, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's all embracing. So all embracing that people don't bother to give it. It comes through rapidly so much, you think, I won't bother. Sulfur's always there, and actually it's probably the remedy.
Yeah.
Yeah, those 3.
And next question. Favorite books.
Homeopathic books?
Well, ideally, but hey, it's open. It's up to you. What books have really made a impression on you, let's say?
I think homeopathically, obviously, you're going to take out the classics like the organon, obviously. Kent will take out the repertory. I think one of the most important ones for me was Douglas Borland, Dr. Borland, Emergencies in General Practice. Because I love the way he didn't write much. He wrote children's type, but the way he writes and is just so beautifully simple, and just also related a bit to one. He did talk about the relationship of remedies a bit. But I just think he's stunning man, stunning writer. I don't often see good writers being homeopaths, but he was. So it would have to be that would be my number 1. Yeah, there are a few other homeopathic ones. In terms of other books, I think probably Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky is a cracker.
Okay.
Well, big Russian, you like pages, it takes you ages to get into it. Once you get into it, it's so beautifully descriptive of the human psyche, guilt, all that stuff.
That reminds me of the huge book of Lord of the Rings, because it takes a long time to actually get into that, and you think, well, do I want to read? But once you do get in, it's this magical capture, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Thomas Hardy, he's the same. It's like really detailed at the beginning. Oh God, I can't remember. Like when they were writing by hand, so it's paced differently. It's like this lovely slowness. You have to slow down to really take it in, as with so many other things.
Mike, what's on the horizon for you? What are you up to sort of later this year? What's taking place? More teaching is involved around the world?
Yeah. Well, I'll be teaching CHE in London, as I do most weekends. My own college as well. Maybe going to Ireland to teach, but I might be doing a seminar in Spain. So we're going to be working. They'll be advertising about that soon in Malaga, and I just love the idea of going to the south of Spain in May next year, eating paella with a group of interested students, and then you can go to the beach in the afternoon. I haven't done that sort of stuff. Other people do it, but I'm going to do it hopefully this next year. So I'm really hoping that takes off. What else? Well, we're going to get the Orion course going, as we've said. We've talked about that. A few other little projects in mind, but I'd have to kill you if I told you because they're top secret.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm afraid. Yeah, it's up to you, but I wouldn't. Quite a lot. Maybe start writing the book.
Please do. Remedy relationships.
Yeah.
But just make sure it guide to remedy relationships.
Oh, I will. Don't you worry about that. Don't you worry. I will do. Yeah.
It's it's been a real pleasure and honor to be able to talk to you. So thank you so much for taking time out and coming on to the podcast and sharing your insights and experiences. It's really been great.
Great. Well, thank you for having me.
Pleasure.
Much.
And I hope later this year, or certainly early next year, you'll come back and share some more.
Sure, no problem. You get out there and enjoy the sunshine because it's beautiful here.
I do hope you've enjoyed the Homeopathy Health Show here on UK Health Radio, the world's #1 talk health radio. Tune in next time for more things homeopathy, interviews and segments on the healing possibilities that homeopathy can bring you. And don't forget to visit UK Health Radio online at www.ukhealthradio.com to see the many other amazing shows available to listen live and on demand. Or why not download the app from the iOS and Android stores. Until next time, stay safe and take care.